Hello and welcome. I am Reverend Jeffrey Meyer, preacher, teacher, and apostle to Surrey Central City Church, and your host for Spirit and Life Radio. Welcome to the program, friends. We are in Lesson 7, destroying the 5 major obstacles that lead to confusion, frustration, and defeat. And these 5 obstacles are sin, number 1, 2, leaning to the arm of the flesh, number 3, lack of knowledge of the truth, number 4, lack of hearing God's voice clearly, and number 5, lack of clarity of direction, that is, not knowing God's will. Folks, the church must break out of confusion. And so, having dealt with the first obstacle at the end of yesterday's broadcast, we now deal with the second major obstacle, which will bring you to a position of confusion, frustration, and defeat, is leaning to the arm of the flesh. Well, my friends, the Bible talks about crucifying the flesh, does it not? As long as you live according to the carnal desires of your flesh, you will be unable to walk in the victory Christ has provided. Paul said, "So then they that are in the flesh cannot please God." Romans chapter 8, verse 8. It is impossible for you to please God while you are controlled and motivated by your carnal nature and are fulfilling the lusts of the flesh. The word flesh is translated from the Greek word sarx, which refers to man's unregenerate carnal nature with its unbridled passions, desires, and lusts. There are many Christians living in confusion, frustration, and defeat because they are yielding to the lusts of the flesh. They are bound by habits, selfish and immoral desires, and impure thoughts. Many have decided themselves in believing Satan's lie that they can continue to indulge themselves in fulfilling the lusts of their flesh without reaping any consequences and without it affecting their spiritual life. They believe Satan's lie that they can fulfill the lusts of their flesh and still walk in close fellowship with the Lord and take hold of His promises. Well, my friends, do not be deceived. The truth is, as long as you are walking after the flesh, you cannot please God. The flesh, with its carnal thoughts, attitudes, desires, and lusts, wars against the Spirit and will block you from walking in the fullness of God's power and taking hold of the things of God. Listen to Galatians chapter 5, verse 24 in the Amplified Version. It reads, the Apostle Paul said, here's what he said, "And those who belong to Christ Jesus, the Messiah, have crucified the flesh," the godless human nature with its passions and appetites and desires. He didn't say we are to pamper our flesh. He didn't say we should make excuses or allowances for our flesh. He said we should crucify it. How? Galatians chapter 6, verse 8. "For he that soweth to his flesh shall of his flesh reap corruption. But he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting." Friends, as Christians, we must refuse to depend on the arm of the flesh. The children of Israel brought confusion upon themselves and were defeated because they depended upon the arm of the flesh to deliver them. As long as they obeyed God and trusted and relied upon Him to deliver them out of the hands of their enemies, He was with them, and they were victorious. However, every time they trusted in the arm of the flesh, they were confused and defeated. When Sennacherib, king of Assyria, attacked the children of Israel, they were afraid and did not know what to do. In their circumstances, instead of looking to God, they leaned to the arm of the flesh. They did not seek God's direction or wisdom to know what to do, but developed their own plan. They went down to Egypt for help. Instead of trusting God and seeking Him, they turned away and placed their trust in Egypt. Here is the key that led to their confusion. In their circumstances, they rejected God's promises and trusted in man's limited strength. As a consequence of trusting in Egypt's strength to protect them from their enemies, they were brought to confusion and were defeated. God told them, "Therefore shall the strength of Pharaoh be your shame, and the trust in the shadow of Egypt your confusion." Isaiah 30, verse 3. Their trust and confidence in Egypt was the source of their shame and confusion. Your strength, when you face desperate circumstances for which there is no possible solution, is not to run here and there trying to work things out or according to your limited understanding. No, you have a choice to allow your mind to be thrown into turmoil or to take hold of the mind of Christ and have God's peace covering your heart and mind. Instead of leading to your own understanding, looking to man for a solution, to physicians, banks for loans, to own your own resources, you must draw upon God's supernatural wisdom and discernment. When Satan tries to throw your mind into confusion, instead of turning away from God and relying upon the arm of the flesh, you must be still. Wait upon him until he gives you direction. During this time of waiting upon God, you must continually take authority over all fear, frustration, and doubt, and stand firm, trusting and believing God to give you victory. Then, as God imparts his wisdom to you and gives you his direction and plan, act in faith, regardless of how you feel, what you see, or what others may say. Obey God, knowing that he is with you. Now, if you're at a point of confusion right now and you have been leaning to the arm of the flesh, stubbornly trying to do things your way instead of looking to God in his direction, repent. Ask God to forgive you for turning away from him and trusting in your own strength. Thirdly, friends, reject Satan's lies and act on the truth. This is the third major obstacle which will bring you to a position of confusion, frustration, and defeat, is the lack of the knowledge of the truth. There are two basic things which will bring an individual to a point of confusion. Number one, lack of information. And number two, misinformation. In the circumstances you face, Satan's strategy is to feed you misinformation, that is, lies. His objective is to keep you from knowing and acting upon the truth. If you do not know the truth, it is easy to be sidetracked and led into rebellion against God. Jesus told his disciples, "If ye continue in my word, then are ye my disciples indeed. And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." John chapter 8, verse 31 and 32. It is in knowing the truth that will set you free and enable you to break through any confusion in your mind. The truth will drive out Satan's lies, set your mind free, and enable you to be victorious over the power of the enemy. Use the truth to resist Satan and drive his lies out of your mind, regardless of how impossible, bleak, or discouraging the circumstances are. You will not become confused or afraid when your mind is filled with the truth and you are acting on it. Saturate your mind with the Word until it is part of your being, where every aspect of your mind is not only filled with the Word, but also renewed and controlled by it. The truth, my friend, will set you free from confusion. The fourth major factor that will bring you into a position of confusion, frustration, and defeat is a lack of hearing God's voice clearly. Instead, we should act knowing you have heard from God. Time after time, the nation of Israel was brought to confusion and defeat because they refused to listen to God's voice and obey. Daniel cried out, "O Lord, to us belongeth confusion of face, to our kings, to our princes, and to our fathers, because we have sinned against thee." Daniel chapter 9, verse 8. God did not leave the children of Israel wondering or questioning what they were to do. When he spoke, he was clear and specific. There was no doubt about what he said. When they needed to know God's direction, they looked to God and often fasted and prayed. As long as they heard his voice and acted in obedience, they were victorious. But when they did not seek to hear his voice or refused to hear him and obey, they brought upon themselves confusion and defeat. If ever there was a time when God's people needed to hear his voice clearly, it is today. And as you face the challenges and opportunities God has planned for you to do, you must know and you must hear from God. God never intended for you to flounder around or grope in the dark to know his direction and leading. He has planned for you to come into his presence and wait upon him until you hear his voice clearly. You have God's promise that he will direct you. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 and 6. Listen, my friend, God does not want you to go from one source to another trying to know what he is saying or what you are to do. He has placed his Spirit within you so that you can hear and know his voice. You cannot depend upon second-hand information. You need to know for yourself. Otherwise, you will remain in confusion. The fifth major obstacle, which will bring confusion, frustration, and defeat in your life, is a lack of clarity of direction, not knowing God's will and taking the wrong direction. Therefore, face your circumstances knowing God's will. There is no reason why you should ever be confused or frustrated concerning God's will or direction in your life. God has made the way clear. He has revealed His will to you through His Word. You do not ever need to be in doubt. By His Spirit within you, you can know God's will and direction in every circumstance you face. Confusion comes when you fail to wait upon the Spirit of God for His direction. Many times, we become anxious and in our zeal get ahead of God, which results in confusion and defeat. Or we fail to act when the Spirit of God directs us and we miss God's will altogether. You must learn to stay in God's presence until you develop a new sensitivity to His Spirit. So when He speaks, you move. When He tells you to turn to the right, you will turn to the right. When He directs you to go to the left, you will go to the left. When the Father says, sit still, you will sit still, waiting upon Him. When He says go forward, you will go forward. You must stay in God's presence and in His Word until the Spirit tells you, this is the way, walk ye in it. Do not act on your circumstances until the Spirit gives you direction. And regardless of how long you may wait or what anyone else may say, don't move until the Spirit of God directs you to move. Say it with me, friend. No more confusion. Beloved, it's not God's will for you to ever be brought to a position of confusion, frustration, and defeat. It is my prayer that you will take hold of the truths I have shared with you in this lesson. Break through any confusion that may be coming against your mind and take a hold of the supernatural wisdom of God. The Father wants you to live your life according to His supernatural wisdom that He will release into your mind. You have this promise. If any of you is deficient in wisdom, let him ask of the giving God who gives to everyone liberally and ungrudgingly, without reproaching or fault-finding, and it will be given to him. James chapter 1, verse 5 in the Amplified. As long as you keep your trust in God, you will not be brought to confusion. King David prayed, in Thee, O Lord, do I put my trust. Let me never be put to confusion. Psalm 71, verse 1. Make that the prayer of your heart and walk in total victory. No more confusion. Say it, no more confusion. And remember to never react to your circumstances from a position of confusion or frustration. Wait upon God, stay in His presence until you develop a new sensitivity to His Spirit. So when He speaks, you act. This completes Lesson 7, and I'll be waiting for you in our next broadcast. If you'd like to visit our Sunday service, it is held at 10:30 a.m. in the brand new Chuck Bailey Recreation Center, just south of the Gateway SkyTrain station and just north of the BC Lions training facility on the corner of Park City Way and 107 Avenue. And you may write to us and or send your donations, and please, I want to make a plea to you. We do need your help to keep this ministry on the air. And on the Canadian side, you can write Spirit and Life Radio suite number 491, 7360. That's 7360, 137th Street, Surrey, BC, V3W1A3. 137th Street in Surrey, V3W1A3. And on the U.S. side, Spirit and Life Radio, P.O. Box 737. P.O. Box 737, and that is in Ferndale, Washington, 98248. 98248. Canadians, please make your checks out to Surrey Central City Church and write Spirit and Life Radio in the memo section of your check so we can designate it to this ministry. And on the U.S. side, write your checks to Spirit Life Worship Center so we may receipt all of you properly who give. Now, friends, remember the words of John 6:63. It is the Spirit who gives life. The flesh profits nothing. The words that I speak to you are spirit, and they are life. Spirit Life Radio, your spirit-filled connection.